Welcome into the SEC tournament preview. This one's definitely the best tournament. With the high level matchups, feels like even on the first day on Wednesday, every game is kind of a fun matchup between all these teams at one point. Maybe not all of them, but minus a couple have been in the tournament conversation. South Carolina, LSU aside, I mean, those top 14 teams have all been in the tournament field at one point or another. Probably going to get 12 or 13 in, but I'm really, really excited for this tournament, as I think everyone should be.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this is the deepest league. It's the best league, and if you want high quality basketball, like this is the one to watch. Obviously, I think the Big Ten could match it to an extent, as I think they're a pretty deep league as well. But I think if you're looking for like exciting first round matchups, I think this is the league that you need to go to. Like, I wouldn't call any team in this league besides maybe LSU. Like, I wouldn't call any other team in this league like bad for power conference standards. I think South Carolina is actually a pretty solid team. They've been much better lately. And I mean, I think they can give Arkansas a scare in that round one matchup. So just a little sneak peek there. But there's a lot of teams that are still kind of battling for their tournament lives there in that first round. Some of them are safely in. I'd say like Vandy's safely in. Arkansas probably needs a win. They got to beat South Carolina, I think, to like solidify their spot there. And you know, Oklahoma could use another win as well. I think Georgia's probably pretty safely in, but a lot of things can happen. So they're definitely going to, all those teams are going to be super motivated to get to the next round.
Yeah. In terms of day one matchups, for me, not just because I'm a fan, but I think the game I'm looking forward to the most is that Texas Vanderbilt game. Texas at Vanderbilt. Texas led at halftime. Vanderbilt ended up pulling out at home by I think 8. But I think this game is going to be fun because I think it means a lot. Not that the other games don't, but Texas is really, really fighting for their tournament lives at this point. Like they need to win a couple of games, and Vanderbilt is in, but I think under first year head coach Mark Byington, like they're not satisfied. I think he's still trying to prove with this team that they belong at the top of the SEC with in the same conversation as some of these other teams. So they're going to be extremely, extremely motivated, in my opinion, to try and go on a deep run. Whereas maybe some other teams who know they're safely in, maybe have some guys who are injured or something. They may take it a little bit easier just so they're healthy for next week for the big dance. But I think this game is going to be really entertaining to watch because I think both teams are going to be just playing super hard.
For sure. And hopefully Trey Johnson makes a shot this game. He struggled in the last game of the year against Oklahoma. It was not pretty. And it was probably due for a really bad shooting game. He takes a lot of tough ones. So
he did miss some open layups too. Or like not open, but like pretty good looks.
Yeah. Just not a great game, but he's been an extremely tough shot maker all year long. He's been fantastic. He's been keeping that offense afloat for whatever that's worth. It hasn't been a great offense outside of him. So yeah, that's definitely a fun first round matchup. Probably will get played in the 80s. I think it will be played with pace. So it'll be super fun. I'm pretty excited for Oklahoma and Georgia. I think it's definitely a clash of different styles.
Disclaimer: this isn't a football game either. This is Oklahoma Georgia basketball that we're excited about.
Yeah, definitely. It could be the last time we say that. It's definitely the first time that we've ever said that, or anybody's ever said that on a podcast. But definitely a clash of two different styles. I think obviously Oklahoma has the advantage in the backcourt. They have guys like Jeremiah Fears, Kobe Elvis, Duke Miles, and the upcoming of Dayton Forsyth has been pretty impressive as well. He's showed flashes of being really a pretty good player in this league, and yeah, they just have a ton of depth at the guard position, and that's where Georgia's a bit vulnerable. But Georgia should dominate the glass in that game, so it'll be interesting to see, which style wins out. Georgia won the first matchup, I believe, and I think that was their only matchup of the year. So, I mean, I do think Georgia ends up coming out on top, just because I do think the defensive unit is far better, and I think their ability to get on the offensive glass might be a little bit too much for a smaller Oklahoma team that might not have Sam Godwin either.
Yeah. That game's interesting too because honestly, and this is a little bit of a sneak peek at my bracket, but I think whoever wins this game, I think is going to go on to beat Kentucky. That's my prediction anyway. Um, I just like the matchup. Like even if it is Oklahoma, they basically lost at the buzzer to Otega Owe at home against Kentucky a couple weeks ago when it took Otega Owe had 21 of 23 in the last 10 minutes for Kentucky to win that game. So they've shown they can beat them. Georgia beat them, right? Or
yeah, Georgia beat them at home. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, both teams have either been right on the doorstep or have beaten them. So I think the winner of that game has a pretty good chance of going to play Alabama in the quarterfinal.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat there, and yeah, Kentucky's they're super vulnerable, especially in the front court, and they live and die by their shot making, and their shot making isn't as great without Jackson Robinson, who's done for the season. So, yeah, definitely a vulnerable team, and overall, yeah, I think Georgia definitely has a pretty decent chance to go on a little bit of a run. I kind of like how they match up with Alabama, but Alabama might have a little bit too much firepower there, but I could see a lot of teams in this league going on a run just because this league is so high quality. Like obviously we could see Vanderbilt go on a run. We've seen them beat pretty much every single team in this league. I mean, maybe not Auburn, but yeah, I think they're a pretty good team with a super fun style. They can turn anybody over, and the guard play is super exciting as well.
Yeah. Now there's an underrated potential matchup later in the tournament that I really have my eyes on. Probably not one that people are talking about or would be talking about, and that's a rematch of Missouri Florida. That's a game I really would be interested to see. Missouri went at Florida, beat them, and did it pretty convincingly. They played really well that night. Um, and Missouri's been kind of struggling lately. Obviously, as we've talked about, they've lost 3 straight. Um, so they're obviously not trending in the right direction. Meanwhile, Florida has been great. However, I think that matchup is a really interesting matchup where Missouri just has a slew of guys that they can just cycle in there, and they have the ability, as we've seen against Alabama, that game against Alabama when their offense was just clicking on all cylinders. Like they have the ability to just get super hot. That game I think would be one that's played at a super 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 high pace, and so that would be a really fun game for the fans. And I think it has some appeal. Florida and that revenge angle, Missouri just trying to get back to playing winning basketball like they have been all season, heading into March or into the big dance.
Yeah, that would be a fun matchup. I do think Florida would. I think they could win that game pretty convincingly, honestly. Although it would be like a fun game to watch, like super fast pace. But Missouri, they've shown that they're pretty vulnerable on the defensive end. They've been getting smoked on the interior. And Dennis Gates, I mean, I would say he's searching for a rotation, but he's kind of just throwing guys out there and just, he's just throwing something at a wall, hoping that it sticks. And it just hasn't been working lately. And I think it's a little bit gimmicky. And I'm kind of out on the entire thing that they're trying to do over there. And like the offense is obviously really explosive. They don't really have any weaknesses on that end. They take care of the ball. They hit a bunch of shots. They get on the offensive glass and they get to the free throw line, all at elite clips. So it's just the defense that I worry about. And I especially worry about them on the defensive glass in that game against Florida, who has one of the best front lines in the entire country. They have four or three bigs at this point. Oh, no, they have four bigs at this point that can really expose that smaller Missouri front court. But yeah, it would be a really fun style. And Caleb Grill goes for 25 to 30, I think they have a really good shot of winning that game. So, but for me, I'd say my most anticipated matchup would be probably a rematch between Auburn and Texas A&M. And I think Auburn was kind of just, I wouldn't say they were sleeping or after winning the SEC championship, but they weren't really all that motivated to, prove anything else. And it was just a really good spot for A&M to, jump all over the Auburn Tigers. And they got all over the glass. They rebounded at a 60% rate in that game. But
they had 23 offensive rebounds, right?
Yeah, just pretty crazy to watch, honestly. And Auburn's vulnerable on the defensive glass, but I think getting a more motivated Auburn in a tournament setting, I do think they could get the job done there. But like I've said 100 times on this podcast, I think A&M can beat pretty much anybody in the country with their style of play. They can win the shot volume battle. Like I said, 23 offensive rebounds is ridiculous. And I think they could do similar things, and they can turn over anybody in the country. And if teams aren't making threes against them, they can literally beat anybody in the entire country with their athleticism. That's pretty top tier. So that'd be a pretty exciting game for me to watch. It'd be, a ton of athletes on both sides going at each other. It would be a 3.5-hour game. So maybe not the most exciting after about 2 hours, but yeah, that's the one I would most look forward to.
Yeah, I mean, I think that game might be longer than what an Auburn and Texas A&M football game might take.
Might be longer than that 4 overtime game that
Notre Dame.
what was it, Cal and Notre Dame?
Notre Dame. Yeah,
that could last longer than that in regulation.
Yeah. So with that, going to bring up our predictions now. Bring up Cody's first here. Cody, I'll let you talk through this, but looks like a Texas A&M Florida championship.
Yeah, and I'll start with a few first-round matchups. Like I said, I think Arkansas can be vulnerable, especially if they don't have a Due Theroux, and because their offense kind of doesn't fall off a cliff, but it gets much, much worse. And that, they're obviously without Boogie Flan for the rest of the season. So they just don't really have the shot making, or, they don't really get on the offensive glass all that well. So they don't have a ton of paths or a ton of upside with their offense. And South Carolina's playing much better ball as of late. And they beat the crap out of Arkansas at home. And their defense looked incredible. And Colin Murray-Boyles was kind of getting whatever he wanted on the offensive end. So I think South Carolina can win that game. And actually, I did pick them to beat Arkansas. Took Vandy to beat Texas. Mississippi State, I'm not all that high on, but I do have them beating LSU pretty easily. I think LSU is pretty much dead at this point. They're kind of ready for the offseason. And I took Georgia to beat Oklahoma. Like I said earlier, I have them going to the quarterfinal matchup against Bama, where I ultimately have Bama winning that game.
Yeah,
but
I think rumor has it that LSU has flights booked for spring break, Thursday to Sunday, right? Because I think LSU's on spring break this week, so they've got flights out of where is this, Nashville? They've got flights out of Nashville on Wednesday night.
Yeah, I mean, they have to, right? I mean, good for them. They can get to their vacation early. I think they're definitely ready for it, and I don't really see a great direction for that program overall. I'm not all that high on Matt McMahon as a head coach, but that's for a later date to talk about them. But yeah, like I said, I like the upside of A&M. I have them going all the way to the final. I like how they match up with Tennessee. I just think Tennessee hit a million threes against them when they played them in College Station. Chaz Lanier went off. I believe he had 8 threes in that game. And you would have to think that Buzz Williams has a different defensive game plan, or at least thinks about guarding Chaz Lanier a little bit. And if you can do that, I think their defense has a lot of advantages against Tennessee. So ultimately, I think they win that game. And then obviously, gun to my head, I would pick Auburn to win that game, but I'm going to be a little bit more bold and say that A&M gets all over the offensive glass again and takes them down. And then on the other side, like we talked about, Missouri and Florida, we talked about the rematch there. I like Florida. I like them to get all over the glass and expose that weak Missouri defense. And I like how Florida matches up with Alabama as well. We saw that in Tuscaloosa. They defended them pretty well. I mean, they limited the amount of catch and shoot three opportunities that Alabama could get. And I think that's kind of how you beat Alabama. You force Mark Sears and those drivers to kind of just score at the rim. And they actually forced Alabama to shoot a little bit in the mid range. Which Nate Oates absolutely hates when his guys take those mid range shots. So I think Florida has a lot of advantages there. And ultimately, I think they beat A&M in the championship because they can match them on the glass and they have way more shooting upside than A&M, who really doesn't have any unless Wade Taylor's making a million shots and CJ Wilcher off the bench is going nuclear with his 30-foot prayers that he takes. He takes about 3 or 4 of them a game. So yeah, I like Florida. I think they're not the best team in this league, but obviously Auburn I still think is the best team in the country with right there with Duke. But yeah, I'll take Florida. I think they have a pretty fortunate path just because I like how they match up with Bama as well.
Yeah. So just going to jump right to mine, to build on your points. I have the same champion. I have Florida also winning my SEC tournament. Looks a little bit different, but not a ton. We have the same semis too.
Yep, looks like it.
Yeah. So, got to start, but just go back to the first round matchups. I have Arkansas over South Carolina. I think this game really could go either way. I'm just going to side with Arkansas and their talent. I don't love what I've seen from South Carolina. I know they've been playing better, but I feel like they haven't been very good in close games. I feel like they've made a lot of kind of poor decisions down the stretch in some of their close games. Haven't really been
really bad away from home too.
Yeah, they just haven't really been able to close the door in some of those tight games. So I'm going to side with Arkansas in that one. I think they're still like trying to prove they belong. So I think just winning one more really solidifies them as in the tournament. Unfortunately, as a Texas fan, taking Vanderbilt to win this game, I think Texas kind of knows their season is cooked. I think they know they're out unless they go on a deep run, and I just don't see it. I don't see it coming together for this team, but maybe they'll prove me wrong. I hope so. I mean, I picked Vanderbilt. I'm going to root for Texas. Although I don't even know if I want to see them in March Madness. They're just not very good. So I took Mississippi State. Similar reason, right? LSU is just done. And then I actually took Oklahoma to beat Georgia. I think this game is another game that I think could go either way. I think the Georgia size will be a problem. But I think Oklahoma can kind of get going from the outside a little bit. And similarly in their next round against Kentucky, I think they can expose Kentucky's defense a little bit. And Kentucky is obviously just super volatile. So I'm going to side with Oklahoma as kind of my sleeper to make a little bit of a run. Then I have Missouri taking down Mississippi State. I don't really have much to say there. I just think Missouri's better. And then A&M, I actually have winning a couple of games, getting to the semis. I think they match up well with Vanderbilt. I think it's a good revenge angle. They lost at home against Vanderbilt a couple weeks ago. Tyler Nickel hit 7 threes in that game. Vanderbilt really shot it well that night. Texas A&M did not play well. I believe they were like 7.5-point favorites at home in that game. And then I think they match up well with Tennessee. I like them, to get all over the glass in that game. And then that sets up a date with Auburn, a rematch. I just think Auburn is going to be too motivated for this one, especially after the last week. Like, although they were kind of probably checked out a little bit, there's still, no denying they don't want to lose games. So I'm going to side with Auburn there. I think they're, top 2 team in the country still. However, in that bottom, I have Florida, Alabama. Florida gets them again. And then I have Florida taking down Auburn in the championship. I just think Florida is playing really well right now. Putting up a bunch of points, and I like the way they're trending right now. I don't think necessarily that they're better than Auburn, but I think that they're kind of built for this tournament setting. with all these games in a short period of time, um, and certainly have the ability to get hot and take down an Auburn team. So I'm gonna say Florida wins this one.
Yeah, I mean, I would obviously agree. Obviously, I think they have a little bit of an easier path than the path that you drew out. I put A&M in the finals, so obviously Auburn's going to be a much tougher test. But they've already beat them, and they beat them at Neville Arena, so they can definitely do it again. And their front court is a really good matchup between you know that between Jani Broom and Cardwell against those four Florida bigs that they can throw at you, and you know the shot making battle in that game is going to be super fun. I mean, Auburn's guards are much improved this year, obviously. So, Pettiford and Denver Jones can obviously shoot their way to a win in that game, and you couldn't really say that in past years about Auburn teams. So, yeah, it should be a super exciting game. That would be a way more fun game than I think the matchup that I had with Florida and A&M. But so yeah, this would definitely be the ideal championship game.
Yeah. So, we'll see what happens this tournament. I think we could really see a slew of teams go on a run and maybe come out on top. We didn't spend a ton of time talking about Alabama, but they're just as capable as anyone of winning this tournament as well. And nor do we talk about Tennessee much. I just I don't love them in this type of tournament, especially against the teams that are out there, the top teams anyway. I think that they're a little bit overvalued.
Yeah, I don't think the offense just has enough firepower to step up against like the elite competition, especially on a neutral floor. Like I think they've had the ability to do it on their home floor, but once they stepped away from home, they really showed some vulnerabilities there. And yeah, just for what it's worth, just a different topic. I'll be throwing a few bucks down on A&M to win the SEC actually at 25-1. I think they have a really good path. Like Tennessee, they're vulnerable on the offensive end, and I do think A&M ultimately wins that game. And then obviously they can beat Auburn again. They've already proved they could do that. So I do like them to at least get to the final, and I think that's a pretty not a great price. I mean, it's a good price for us to get. So with a team that can punch up against anybody in the country, that'll be my spot to attack here. I do think Florida wins the league, but at plus 270, I just don't really love it because they're going to have to play Auburn. They're probably going to be like plus 180, plus 190 to win that game anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly don't hate it. They're obviously their ability to get on the glass. I mean, we saw what they did to Auburn on the glass, 23 offensive rebounds, as you kind of already alluded to. Like they can really dominate the game against, it seems like almost anyone, with their ability to get on the glass, even if they're not making shots. So I definitely don't hate that pick as kind of a sleeper pick. But this tournament should be great. Tips off on Wednesday. Looking forward to all the great matchups. There's really no bad matchup that we're going to get aside from maybe Mississippi State and LSU. But everything else appears as though it will be a really fun matchup. Looking forward to this tournament, but hope you guys enjoy it as well. And we'll talk to you in the next tournament preview.